Chapter 3. Whatever was happening in the world, the witches did not want to know. In the evenings, consistently and determinedly, Triss guided the long conversations held in the dark hall, lit only by the bursts of flames in the great hearth, towards politics. The witcher's reactions were always the same. Geralt, a hand on his forehead, did not say a word. Vesemir nodded, from time to time throwing in comments which amounted to little more than that, in his day, everything had been better, more logical, more honest and healthier. Eskil pretended to be polite, and neither smiled nor made eye contact, and even managed, very occasionally, to be interested in some issue or question of little importance. Kaer yawned openly and looked at the ceiling, and Lambert did nothing to hide his disdain. They did not want to know anything. They cared nothing for dilemmas which drove sleep from kings, wizards, rulers and leaders, or for the problems which made councils, circles and gatherings tremble and buzz. For them, nothing existed beyond the passes, drowning in snow, or beyond the Gwenlech river, carrying ice floats in its leaden current. For them, only Kaer Morhen existed, lost and lonely amongst the savage mountains. That evening, Triss was irritable and restless. Perhaps it was the wind, howling along the great castle's walls. And that evening they were all oddly excited. The witches, apart from Geralt, were unusually talkative. Quite obviously, they only spoke of one thing. Spring. About their approaching departure for the trail. About what the trail would have in store for them. About vampires, wyverns, leshies, lycanthropes and basilisks. This time, it was Triss who began to yawn and stare at the ceiling. This time, she was the one who remained silent, until Eskil turned to her with a question which she had anticipated. "And what is it really like in the south, on the Yaruga? Is it worth going there? We wouldn't like to find ourselves in the middle of any trouble." "What do you mean by trouble?"
"Well, you know," he stammered. "You keep telling us about the possibility of a new war, about constant fighting on the borders, about rebellions in the lands invaded by Nilfgaard. You said they're saying the Nilfgaardians might cross the Yaruga again."
"So what?" said Lambert. "They've been hitting, killing and striking against each other constantly for hundreds of years. It's nothing to worry about. I've already decided I'm going to the far south, to Soden, Mahakam and Angren. It's well known that monsters abound wherever armies have passed. The most money is always made in places like that." "True," Cohen acknowledged. "The neighbourhood grows deserted. Only women who can't fend for themselves remain in the villages. Scores of children with no home or care roaming around. Easy prey attracts monsters."
"And the Lord Barons and village elders," added Eskil, "have their heads full of the war, and don't have the time to defend their subjects. They have to hire us, it's true. But from what Triss has been telling us all these evenings, it seems the conflict with Nilfgaard is more serious than that. Not just some local little war. Is that right, Triss?"
"Even if it were the case," said the magician spitefully, "surely that suits you. A serious, bloody war will lead to more deserted villages, more widowed women, simply hordes of orphaned children." "I can't understand your sarcasm." Geralt took his hand away from his forehead. "I really can't, Triss."
"Nor I, my child."
Vesemir raised his head.
"What do you mean? Are you thinking about the widows and children? Lambert and Cohen speak frivolously, as youngsters do. But it is not the words that are important. After all, they
defend these children," she interrupted crossly. "Yes, I know. From the werewolf who might kill 2 or 3 a year, while an Nilfgaardian foray can kill and burn an entire settlement in an hour. Yes, you defend orphans, while I fight that there should be as few of those orphans as possible. I'm fighting the cause, not the effect. That's why I'm on Foltest of Temeria's council and sit with Faircart and Kira Metz. We deliberate on how to stop war from breaking out, and should it come to it, how to defend ourselves, because war is constantly hovering over us like a vulture. For you, it's an adventure. For me, it's a game in which the stakes are survival. I'm involved in this game, and that's why your indifference and frivolity hurt and insult me." Geralt sat up and looked at her.
"We're witches, Triss. Can't you understand that?"
"What's there to understand?" The enchantress tossed her chestnut mane back. "Everything's crystal clear. You've chosen a certain attitude to the world around you. The fact that this world might at any moment fall to pieces has a place in this choice. In mine, it doesn't. That's where we differ.
I'm not sure it's only there we differ.
The world is falling to ruins, she repeated. We can watch it happen and do nothing. Or we can counteract it.
How?
He smiled derisively.
With our emotions?
She did not answer, turning her face to the fire roaring in the hearth. The world is falling to ruins, repeated Cohen, nodding his head in feigned thoughtfulness. How many times I've heard that?
Me too.
Lambert grimaced. And it's not surprising. It's a popular saying of late. It's what kings say when it turns out that a modicum of brains is necessary to rule after all. It's what merchants say when greed and stupidity have led them to bankruptcy. It's what wizards say when they start to lose their influence on politics or income. And the person they're speaking to should expect some sort of proposal straight away. So cut the introduction short, Triss, and present us with your proposition. Verbal squabbling has never amused me, the enchantress declared, gauging him with cold eyes. Or displays of eloquence which mock whoever you're talking to. I don't intend to take part in anything like that. You know only too well what I mean. You want to hide your heads in the sand. That's your business. But coming from you, Geralt, it's a great surprise.
Triss.
The white-haired witcher looked her straight in the eyes again.
What do you expect from me? To take an active part in the fight to save a world which is falling to pieces? Am I to enlist in the army and stop Nilfgaard? Should I, if it comes to another battle for Soden, stand with you on the hill, shoulder to shoulder, and fight for freedom?
I'd be proud, she said quietly, lowering her head. I'd be proud and happy to fight at your side.
I believe that, but I'm not gallant enough, nor valiant enough. I'm not suited to be a soldier or a hero. And having an acute fear of pain, mutilation and death is not the only reason.
You can't stop a soldier from being frightened, but you can give him motivation to help him overcome that fear. I have no such motivation. I can't have. I'm a witcher, an artificially created mutant. I kill monsters for money. I defend children when their parents pay me to. If Nilfgaardian parents pay me, I'll defend Nilfgaardian children. And even if the world lies in ruin, which does not seem likely to me, I'll carry on killing monsters in the ruins of this world until some monster kills me. That is my fate, my reason, my life, and my attitude to the world. And it is not what I chose. It was chosen for me. You're embittered, she stated, tugging nervously at a strand of hair, or pretending to be. You forget that I know you, so don't play the unfeeling mutant, devoid of a heart, of scruples, and of his own free will in front of me. And the reasons for your bitterness I can guess and understand. Ciri's prophecy, correct?
No, not correct, he answered icily. I see that you don't know me at all. I'm afraid of death just like everyone else, but I grew used to the idea of it a very long time ago. I'm not under any illusions. I'm not complaining about fate, Triss. This is plain, cold calculation, statistics. No witcher has yet died of old age, lying in bed dictating his will. Not a single one. Ciri didn't surprise or frighten me. I know I'm going to die in some cave which stinks of carcasses, torn apart by a griffin, lamia or manticore. But I don't want to die in a war, because they're not my wars.
I'm surprised at you, she replied sharply. I'm surprised that you're saying this. Surprised by your lack of motivation, as you learnedly chose to describe your supercilious distance and indifference. You were at Soden, Angren and Trans River. You know what happened to Cintra, know what befell Queen Calanthe and many thousands of people there. You know the hell Ciri went through, know why she cries out at night, and I know too, because I was also there. I'm afraid of pain and death too, even more so now than I was then. I have good reason. As for motivation, it seems to me that back then I had just as little as you. Why should I, a magician, care about the fates of Soden, Brugge, Cintra, or other kingdoms? The problems of having more or less competent rulers, the interests of merchants and barons. I was a magician. I too could have said it wasn't my war, that I could mix elixirs for the Nilfgaardians on the ruins of the world. But I stood on that hill next to Vilgefortz, next to Artur Terranova, next to Faircart, next to Enid Finn de Beyer and Philippa Eilhart, next to your Yennefer, next to those who no longer exist. Coral, Yoel, Vaniel. There was a moment when out of sheer terror I forgot all my spells except for one, and thanks to that spell I could have teleported myself from that horrific place back home to my tiny little tower in Maribor. There was a moment when I threw up from fear, when Yennefer and Coral held me up by the shoulders and hair. Stop! Please, stop! No, Geralt, I won't. After all, you want to know what happened there on the hill, so listen. There was a din and flames. There were flaming arrows and exploding balls of fire. There were screams and crashes, and I suddenly found myself on the ground on a pile of charred, smoking rags, and I realised that the pile of rags was Yoel, and that thing next to her, that awful thing, that trunk with no arms and no legs, which was screaming so horrifically, was Coral. And I thought the blood in which I was lying was Coral's blood, but it was my own. And then I saw what they had done to me, and I started to howl. Howl like a beaten dog, like a battered child. Leave me alone! Don't worry, I'm not going to cry. I'm not a little girl from a tiny tower in Maribor anymore. Damn it! I'm Trissmerigold, the 14th one, killed at Soden. There are 14 graves at the foot of the obelisk on the hill, but only 13 bodies. You're amazed such a mistake could have been made? Most of the corpses were in hard-to-recognise pieces. No one identified them. The living were hard to account for, too. Of those who had known me well, Yennefer was the only one to survive, and Yennefer was blind. Others knew me fleetingly, and always recognised me by my beautiful hair. And I, damn it, didn't have it any more.
Geralt held her closer. She no longer tried to push him away.
They used the highest magics on us, she continued in a muted voice. Spells, elixirs, amulets and artefacts. Nothing was left wanting for the wounded heroes of the hill. We were cured, patched up, our former appearances returned to us, our hair and sight restored. You can hardly see the marks, but I will never wear a plunging neckline again, Geralt. Never.
The witches said nothing. Neither did Ciri, who had slipped into the hall without a sound, and stopped at the threshold, hunching her shoulders and folding her arms.
So, the magician said after a while, don't talk to me about motivation. Before we stood on that hill, the chapter simply told us, that is what you have to do. Whose war was it? What were we defending there? The land? The borders? The people and their cottages? The interests of kings? The wizards' influence and income? Order against chaos? I don't know. But we defended it because that's what had to be done. And if the need arises, I'll stand on the hill again, because if I don't, it will make the sacrifices made the first time futile and unnecessary. I'll stand beside you, shouted Ciri shrilly. Just wait and see. I'll stand with you. Those Nilfgaardians are going to pay for my grandmother, pay for everything. I haven't forgotten.
Be quiet, growled Lambert. Don't butt into grown-ups' conversations.
Oh, sure.
The girl stamped her foot, and in her eyes a green fire kindled.
Why do you think I'm learning to fight with a sword? I want to kill him, that Black Knight from Sintra with wings on his helmet, for what he did to me, for making me afraid. And I'm going to kill him. That's why I'm learning it.
And therefore you'll stop learning, said Geralt in a voice colder than the walls of Kaer, until you understand what a sword is and what purpose it serves in a witch's hand. You will not pick one up. You are not learning in order to kill and be killed. You are not learning to kill out of fear and hatred, but in order to save lives, your own and those of others.
The girl bit her lip, shaking from agitation and anger.
Understood?
Ciri raised her head abruptly.
No! Then you'll never understand. Get out!
Get out!
Get out!
Ciri spun on her heel and stood still for a moment, undecided, as if waiting for something that could not happen. Then she ran swiftly up the stairs. They heard the door slam.
Too severe, Wolf, said Vesemir. Much too severe. And you shouldn't have done it in Triss's presence. The emotional ties. Don't talk to me about emotions. I've had enough of all this talk about emotions.
And why is that? The magician smiled derisively and coldly. Why, Geralt? Ciri is normal. She has normal feelings. She accepts emotions naturally, takes them for what they really are. You obviously don't understand and are therefore surprised by them. It surprises and irritates you. The fact that someone can experience normal love, normal hatred, normal fear, pain and regret, normal joy and normal sadness. That it is coolness, distance and indifference which are considered abnormal. Oh, yes, Geralt. It annoys you. It annoys you so much that you are starting to think about Kaer Morhen's vaults, about the laboratorium, the dusty demijohns full of mutagenic poisons. Triss, called Vesemir, gazing at Geralt's face, suddenly grown pale. But the enchantress refused to be interrupted, and spoke faster and faster, louder and louder. Who do you want to deceive, Geralt? Me? Her? Or maybe yourself? Maybe you don't want to admit the truth, a truth everyone knows except you. Maybe you don't want to accept the fact that human emotions and feelings weren't killed in you by the elixirs and grasses. You killed them. You killed them yourself. But don't you dare kill them in the child. Silence, he shouted, leaping from the chair. Silence, Merigold. He turned away and lowered his arms defenselessly. Sorry, he said quietly. Forgive me, Triss. He made for the stairs quickly, but the enchantress was up in a flash and threw herself at him, embracing him. You are not leaving here alone, she whispered. I won't let you be alone. Not right now. They knew immediately where she had run to. Fine, wet snow had fallen that evening and had covered the forecourt with a thin, impeccably white carpet. In it, they saw her footsteps. Ciri was standing on the very summit of the ruined wall, as motionless as a statue. She was holding the sword above her right shoulder, the crossguard at eye level. The fingers of her left hand were lightly touching the pommel. On seeing them, the girl jumped, spun in a pirouette, and landed softly in an identical but reverse mirror position. Ciri, said the Witcher, come down, please. It seemed she hadn't heard him. She did not move, not even a muscle. Triss, however, saw the reflection of the moon thrown across her face by the blade glisten silver over a stream of tears. No one's going to take the sword away from me, she shouted. No one. Not even you. Come down, repeated Geralt. She tossed her head defiantly, and the next second leapt once more. A loose brick slipped beneath her foot with a grating sound. Ciri staggered, trying to find her balance, and failed. The Witcher jumped. Triss raised her hand, opening her mouth to utter a formula for levitation. She knew she couldn't do it in time. She knew that Geralt would not make it. It was impossible. Geralt did make it. He was forced down to the ground, thrown on his knees and back. He fell, but he did not let go of Ciri. The magician approached them slowly. She heard the girl whisper and sniff. Geralt, too, was whispering. She could not make out the words, but she understood their meaning. A warm wind howled in the crevices of the wall. The Witcher raised his head. Spring, he said quietly. Yes, she acknowledged, swallowing. There is still snow in the passes, but in the valleys, it is already spring. Shall we leave, Geralt? You, Ciri and I. Yes, it is high time. Upriver we saw their towns, as delicate as if they were woven from the morning mist out of which they loomed. It seemed as if they would disappear a moment later, blown away on the wind which rippled the surface of the water. There were little palaces, white as Yennefer flowers. There were little towers, looking as though they were plaited out of ivy. There were bridges as airy as weeping willows. And there were other things for which we could find no word or name. Yet we already had names for everything which our eyes beheld in this new, reborn world. Suddenly, in the far recesses of our memories, we found the words for dragons and griffins, mermaids and nymphs, sylphs and dryads once more, for the white unicorns which drank from the river at dusk, inclining their slender necks towards the water. We named everything, and everything seemed to be close to our hearts, familiar to us, ours. apart from them. They, although so resembling us, were alien, so very alien that for a long time we could find no word for their strangeness. Hen gedimdith, elves and humans.
A good elf is a dead elf.
Marshal Milan Rabenik.